It's been years since I last made a video about CarPlay, which is crazy when you look at how many people watched the last one. It's clear that this is a topic that you guys are really interested in. And a huge amount has changed with CarPlay over the last few years. It's one of those features that we probably use every day, but unless you actually take the time to learn how to use it properly, you're only scratching the surface of what it can do. So whether you're someone who uses CarPlay and knows there's more to it, or someone who's been putting off using it because it all feels a bit confusing, this video is for you. We're going to cover the basics, we'll explore navigation, we'll look at some of the other features in CarPlay, we'll talk about driving focus, and we'll look at changing some of the settings. Okay, let's get into it. Let's start with the absolute basics of CarPlay, and I'll keep this as short as possible in case you're already pretty comfortable with it. CarPlay is powered entirely by your iPhone and then shown on your car's in-car entertainment system. All the actual work, things like running maps, music, podcasts, all of that happens on your iPhone. Your car's display is basically just a screen that shows whatever your phone is doing. There are two ways that you can connect your iPhone to your car for CarPlay, either wired or wireless. This depends completely on the manufacturer. Some cars only support wired CarPlay, some only support wireless, some support both. There are pros and cons to each, but in reality, it just comes down to whatever your car offers. If you're not sure, check your car's manual or speak to the manufacturer. Once you connect your iPhone, CarPlay will appear on your car's screen, just like you can see here. The way that CarPlay looks is very similar to how your iPhone or even an Apple TV looks, and that's intentional. The whole idea is that you already know how to use your iPhone, so moving to CarPlay should feel natural straight away. The app tiles look the same as they do on your iPhone, and you swipe through pages of apps in exactly the same way. One thing worth knowing is that while you can view all your apps here in CarPlay, you can't actually edit the CarPlay home screen from inside CarPlay. You have to make those changes on the iPhone that's paired with your car. The good news is that you don't need to be in the car to do it. You can make changes whenever you like, and they'll apply the next time that you connect. To do this, go into Settings on your iPhone, scroll down and tap General, then scroll again and tap CarPlay. You'll see a list of all the cars that your phone has connected to. Mine shows up as Audi MMI, so I'll tap into that. On this screen, you'll see two things that you can customize: apps and widgets. I'll come back to widgets in a second, but for now, let's tap into apps. This shows you every app that's currently visible in CarPlay. If there are apps available to you that you haven't added yet, they'll be right at the bottom in a section called More Apps. If there's anything that you don't want to appear in CarPlay at all, you can tap the red minus icon on the left and then tap Delete to remove it. You can also reorder the apps using the drag handles on the right. The layout here doesn't match the visual layout of CarPlay, so it helps to understand how the order works. The top app in this list becomes the top left app on the first page of CarPlay. It then goes left to right, then top to bottom as you move down. So if you want an app to sit in the third position on the first page, you would drag it so it becomes the third app in this list. And if you do ever want to undo all of this, there is a reset button in the top right that puts everything back exactly as it was originally. But very quickly, if you watch videos like this and think, well, that's great, but I'll definitely forget it later, I've made something to fix that. I send one short free iPhone tip every day direct to your inbox. It's called the Daily Swipe. It takes 30 seconds to read, and it genuinely helps you remember and actually use tips like the ones in this video. Just scan the QR code on screen or tap the link in the description to join for free. Okay, back to CarPlay. Unlike your iPhone, CarPlay doesn't have an app library. So if you swipe through all your pages of apps to the right, you'll eventually reach the end. But if you swipe back to the left and keep going past the first page of apps, you'll get to what is basically the CarPlay dashboard. This shows lots of little widgets and bits of information from the apps that you're using in CarPlay. Your map takes up most of this screen because CarPlay is really built around navigation. Most of the time you can see enough of the map right here without needing it to open full screen, but if you do want the full screen version, you can just tap the map to open it. If you want to go back to the dashboard view, press the small dashboard icon in the bottom right corner. In my car, it's bottom right, but in some cars, it will be bottom left. You'll usually see a few extra things here as well. There's normally a little music player showing what's currently playing. If you're navigating somewhere, you'll see a mini version of your turn-by-turn directions. And live activities can appear here too. So if you're using an airport app or you've started a timer in a parking app, you can get live updates right on this dashboard view. Jumping back to settings on the iPhone for a second, I mentioned CarPlay widgets, so let me quickly explain how these work These are brand new in iOS 26, and they're basically the same kind of widgets that you get on your iPhone in standby mode or on the home screen of something like your iPad. It's just a small visual bit of useful information that you can scroll through. To get to widgets, we need to go back to the main settings page for our CarPlay setup, and in the Customize section, tap on Widgets. You can see that on my car, I've got 2 stacks of widgets. This will vary depending on the screen in your vehicle. I've seen cars with 3 stacks side by side, some with only 1, and some with 2 smaller stacks at the bottom, and then a larger one at the top. It really depends on what your car supports. You can tap between the different stacks, and you can use the drag handles to move widgets around, or the little red minus to remove anything that you don't want. You can also tap Add Widget and choose from the options available. On mine, for example, I've got things like Amazon for delivery updates, and even a widget from my sleep app showing how much sleep I got the night before. It is totally up to you whether you want to use widgets. I personally don't use them much. I find them a bit of an unnecessary distraction when I'm driving. But if you do want to see them, you just swipe all the way over to the left, past the dashboard screen, and that will bring up your widget screen. Okay, let's talk navigation, because this is really the main thing that most people use CarPlay for. For this video, I'm sticking with Apple Maps for 2 reasons. It is the mapping service that everyone watching will already have, and it's the one that I use and know best. If you prefer Google Maps or Waze or anything else, that's completely fine. But for this video, everything that I show you will be in Apple Maps. First up, a little tip if you've got a more modern car. If your steering wheel has a talk button on it like mine does, there is a decent chance it will activate Siri. All you do is long press that button for a second, and Siri will pop up on your CarPlay screen and start listening. When you finish talking, press the button again. If you don't have a talk button, you can still get to Siri in pretty much the same way. Look in the bottom corner of the CarPlay screen for the little grid button that takes you back to the CarPlay dashboard. If you long press that, it will activate Siri as well. On my display, that whole column sits on the right-hand side. I've seen some cars where it's on the left instead. It just depends on how the manufacturer has laid things out. So if I ever say something is on the right and yours is on the left, just adjust it for your setup. There are also 2 things that catch people out all the time in CarPlay. The first is volume control. CarPlay handles volume on a per feature basis, and this is where people get confused. So for example, if you're listening to Apple Music or the radio and you change the volume, you're only changing the volume for the music. You might turn it right down and then suddenly Siri comes in at full blast telling you that there's a speed camera ahead, and it scares the life out of you. That's because the volume for spoken cues is separate from the volume for music. If you want to adjust the volume for spoken instructions, the easiest way is to trigger Siri using one of the methods that we just talked about. You don't need to say anything, just bring Siri up, then turn the volume up or down while Siri is listening. When you're done, press the button again to close Siri. That sets the volume just for Siri's spoken cues. The other thing people get confused by is why the keyboard is sometimes available and sometimes not. CarPlay knows when the car is sitting still, and it knows when the car is moving. And when the car is moving, it simply won't let you use the keyboard. So what I mean by that is if you tap the CarPlay screen to bring up the extra options, you'll see a search box at the top. If you tap into that while the car isn't moving, you'll see 2 options. You'll see keyboard and you'll see Siri. And that means you can tap keyboard and type whatever you're looking for. But as soon as the car starts moving, the keyboard option disappears and your only option is to use Siri and do everything by voice. So if you prefer using the keyboard, the only way to do that is to pull in somewhere and stop the car first. And it doesn't matter whether it's you typing or a passenger typing, CarPlay blocks the keyboard either way. One useful tip though, and this is from experience, is that if you really want to use the keyboard and you can't pull in, you can hand your phone to a passenger. They can still search in the Maps app on your iPhone while the car is moving, and whatever they type will update instantly on the CarPlay version of Maps. Searching in CarPlay is pretty straightforward. You can ask Siri for directions to a specific place, or you can put in a postcode or a zip code if you want to. You can also ask it to show you local places like coffee shops, petrol stations, grocery stores, that kind of thing. You can see here in the search bar that CarPlay automatically groups these for you, and you can scroll through them and tap any category that you want. When you do that, you'll see everything on a map view and in a list view, and you can tap either one to bring up more details. When you tap into a place, you'll get a place card with a blue navigation button to start navigating, or you might see a phone button, and tapping that will place a call to the business using your iPhone. You'll also see the full address, the distance from where you are, opening hours if they're available, plus a few other useful bits of info. Let's tap the Navigate button for this one so that I can show you how navigation works. You'll see in this case there are a few different ways to get there, and you can pick one by tapping a route on the map or by tapping the matching option on the right. It probably goes without saying, but just so it's clear, if you see amber sections on a route, that means traffic is pretty slow in that area. If you see red sections, that means it's heavily congested. Just tap Go on the route that you want to use, and navigation will start. The navigation window looks slightly different, and pretty quickly it simplifies itself down to a couple of things. You've got your turn-by-turn directions, which for me are up in the top right corner, and you've got the info box down at the bottom. This shows your estimated time of arrival, the time left on your journey, and the distance that you're going to travel. If you want, you can tap Share ETA, and you'll get a little window with quick contacts you speak to a lot. You can share your ETA immediately, and it will use whatever method you usually use for that person, whether that's messages or WhatsApp. If I tap back and then tap into the info box again, you'll see a couple of extra options. Add Stop does exactly what it sounds like. Tap that and you can search for a second location or choose something from the categories. It won't change your final destination, it just adds this new place along the way. And then there's Report. If you tap into this, you can let Apple Maps know about things like a crash, a speed check, roadworks, traffic, all that stuff. It gets aggregated, and if enough people report something, it gets added to the map so that other drivers know about it. Let me quickly show you the buttons on the opposite side of the CarPlay screen. You've got the little four-way arrow button, and if you tap that, you can use the up, down, left, and right arrows to move around the map. Some displays let you swipe the map with your finger, but not all of them do, and that's why this exists. There's also a plus and minus button to zoom in and out. Again, some displays support pinch gestures like your iPhone, but if not, these buttons handle it. Just above that, you've got a report button. It's just a quicker way to get to the same report option that we just looked at. Above that, there's a speaker button. If you tap that, you can adjust the audio settings for your journey. There are three options. Unmuted will speak all the directions and alert you to hazards. Alerts only, which is the one that I normally use, puts the directions on screen but doesn't speak them out loud. And muted turns everything off, which also means you won't hear warnings about things like accidents or speed checks. And then finally, up in the top left of my setup, you've got this little squiggle button. This is your route overview button. Tap it and the map zooms right out to show the full route, including where you are. It's really handy if you're partway through a long journey and you just want a quick look at how much you've got left, or if you want to see whether a quicker route has popped up. If there is an alternative, it will show here. You can tap it to switch routes and then tap the same button again to drop back into your normal navigation view. Okay, so that's maps covered. Let's look at some of the other things that you can do in CarPlay. I think if you're using CarPlay for anything other than maps, it's probably going to be music. And I'm going to use Apple Music for this because it's a stock Apple app and it's the one that I tend to use. You might use something else, but the idea is the same. If you tap into it, you'll see the options up at the top: Home, New, Radio, and Library. Home, New, and Radio are all CarPlay versions of the same sections that you'd see on your phone or your Mac. When it's safe to do so, you can browse around those pages and find whatever you want to listen to. There's an especially useful section in Home called Recently Played, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It shows you the music that you've played most recently across any of your iCloud connected devices. So if you were listening to an album at home yesterday and you want to carry on with it here in the car, this is the quickest and easiest way to find it. If you go into Library, you'll see options for artists, albums, songs, playlists, and there's a downloaded button as well. That one's really handy if you're in an area with a poor data connection because you can jump straight into the music that's already downloaded on your phone. You'll also see in my example that I've got some album artwork showing at the top, and that's because a new feature in iOS 26 lets you pin things to your favorites in music. You just open the music app on your phone, go to whatever you want to pin, long press it, and choose pin. It makes quick navigation in the car really easy. If you've pinned an album or playlist, you can tap it and it will start playing straight away. If you pinned an artist, you can tap their name and you'll get a simple view of their albums in one go. You can also use the magnifying glass to search for any artist, playlist, album, anything that you like. And another nice feature is that when music is playing, you'll see a Share Play button at the top. If you tap that, a QR code pops up on screen. Anyone in the car can scan it with their iPhone and add songs to the now playing queue, which basically lets everyone get involved in your road trip playlist. If you tap into the Messages app, you can then tap on a contact and start speaking a message to Siri, which will then be transcribed and sent to that person. Any message threads that you pinned in Messages will appear at the top, just like they do on your iPhone. In other apps, Calendar lets you see your upcoming appointments in a simple list view, while podcasts and audiobooks work much like the music app, just for podcasts and audiobooks specifically. A lot of the other stuff that you'll want to do in CarPlay, you'll probably do using Siri. There are a couple of real-world examples where Siri is really helpful in CarPlay that I want to share with you. The first is weather. There isn't a dedicated weather app in CarPlay, but you can still use Siri in CarPlay to find out what's going on with the weather. So let's say I'm driving to Canary Wharf in London and I want to know what the weather's like there. I'd just bring up Siri and say, what's the weather like in Canary Wharf right now? And after a moment, CarPlay will give me a forecast. Another feature that I use all the time is using Siri to add reminders when I'm in CarPlay. I remember a lot of things that I need to do when I'm out driving. And if I want to be reminded later on, I can just use Siri. So I might say, for example, remind me to take the bins out tonight at 8 p.m. After a moment, Siri will show the reminder on screen. But more importantly, because this is all being done through my iPhone, that reminder exists on my iPhone and all of my iCloud connected devices. So when I'm sat at home tonight at 8 o'clock, that reminder is going to pop up. Okay, let's talk driving focus for a moment. A focus mode is basically a way of having your iPhone look and behave a certain way, depending on what you're doing. The most common example would be a work focus mode, where you might have a different wallpaper, different apps on your home screen, and different rules around which notifications are allowed while you're working. You can set up a driving focus mode, and the way that you do it is by going into Settings, then scrolling down to Focus, tapping into that, and if you don't already have a driving focus in there, you tap the plus in the top right corner and choose Driving. You'll then press the Customize Focus button to start setting everything up. If your phone supports Apple Intelligence, you can turn on the Intelligent Breakthrough and Silencing option at the top, which is where your phone tries to work out who you probably want to hear from while you're driving. But if you don't want to use that, or you don't have access to it, you can set this up manually. A bit further down, you'll see a People section, and if you tap into this, you can add people using the Add button. You can either silence notifications from this group, which means everyone else is allowed through, or you can allow notifications from this group and silence everyone else. You just pick whichever makes the most sense for you. So you might want immediate family to be able to reach you while you're driving, but nobody else, for example. In the phone call section, you can choose to only allow calls from your favorites or from the people that you've allowed in this focus mode, or everybody, or only people in your contacts or family. And there's a button at the bottom that I would probably recommend turning on called Allow Repeated Calls. This means that anyone who calls you more than once in a 3-minute window will be allowed through. The idea here is that if there's an emergency and someone's in your silenced group, chances are they'll try calling again pretty quickly, and this would let that call through. If you press back, you'll also see an auto reply feature. If you tap into this, you can decide whether you want your phone to automatically reply to any of the people in these groups with a message while you're driving, and you can customize that message. Your phone gives you a default version, but you can type your own if you want. I'll go back. You've then got an option to customize your iPhone's lock screen if you want to, as a way of helping with distractions. I guess that's useful if your phone is up on a mount in the car. I tend to keep mine in the center console or in my pocket, but the option is there. And then right at the bottom, you've got Turn On Automatically. If you tap into that, you can choose to have driving focus activate automatically when connected to your car, or manually, or activate with CarPlay, which is the option that I personally go for. As soon as your phone goes into CarPlay mode, your driving focus will switch on. Okay, let's wrap this video up by looking at some settings, because in general, most of the settings for CarPlay are actually going to be controlled here in the car, not directly on your iPhone. That's a little different from how you customize the CarPlay home screen. Settings is the exact same app in CarPlay as it is on your iPhone, and if you tap into it, you'll see it split into a few sections. Up at the top, we've got driving focus. If you tap into that, you'll see the toggle to activate with CarPlay, the same one that we looked at on the iPhone just a moment ago. That's all this is, just the same button in a different place. If I go back, you'll see an option called Announce Messages. If you tap into that, you can choose whether you want messages to be announced when they come through. There are definitely situations where you wouldn't want your car blurting out messages while you're driving, so you can customize that here. If you tap into Announce options, you can have CarPlay announce new messages every time it starts, silence them, or remember your last setting. I'll go back to Settings and then tap into Appearance. This is where you choose between Always Dark mode or Automatic. Automatic will be light during the day and dark at night. Pick whichever you prefer. I'll go back and tap into Customize Icons. This is new in CarPlay for iOS 26. You can pick the default color options for your apps, or you can choose a dark mode. And when you do that, you can choose whether dark icons come on automatically at night or stay on all the time. Or you can choose clear, which is basically the glass look from iOS 26. With clear icons, you can pick whether they're tinted in a light mode, dark mode, or set to automatic based on the time of day. Just choose whichever version looks best to you. I'll go back again. Underneath Customize Icons, you'll see Wallpaper. Apple don't let you use completely custom wallpapers, but you can still choose from the built-in options here. Tap the one that you want, then Cancel or Set. I'll go all the way back to Settings again and tap into Display. And this is where there's a toggle that I only found out about recently, which is Smart Display Zoom. One thing that I've always noticed in this car, which is an Audi Q7, is that CarPlay has always looked a bit low resolution compared to some rental cars that I've used. And it's because of this button. If Smart Display Zoom is on, CarPlay will configure itself to whatever it thinks is the best resolution for your screen, which in my case lowers the resolution. If I turn it off, it switches to the full available resolution. Text gets a bit smaller, but it's a lot clearer, so I prefer this. Pick whichever one you like. You can also choose whether you want album art in Now Playing. Some people find album art distracting, so feel free to turn that off. I'll go back, scroll down, and tap into Accessibility. In here, you'll find a bunch of options for accessibility needs, like color filters, increasing text size, bold text, voice control that uses your iPhone's microphone, and right at the bottom, you've got sound recognition, which is helpful if you struggle a bit with hearing. It can help you spot important sounds while you're driving. We'll go back, and if your phone supports it, you'll see an Apple Intelligence and Siri button. If you tap into that, you can choose whether you want suggestions shown on your dashboard. That's usually things like locations that your iPhone thinks you might be headed to based on the time of day. Some people like it, some don't. Automatically send messages, if enabled, will send whatever you dictate to Siri without asking you to confirm it. I personally prefer that off. I like to approve messages before they go out, but go with whatever you prefer. If we go back again, there is a toggle switch for live activities. This is most relevant when you're on the dashboard view or the widget view. For example, if you use a flight tracking app or a parking app, CarPlay can show live information there. You can just choose whether or not that's allowed. And then finally, silent mode at the bottom is exactly what it sounds like. You can choose to mirror silent mode from your iPhone or turn it on or off manually. So there you go, that's CarPlay. Hopefully by now you can see that it's a really powerful, really capable tool, and honestly not that hard to use once you get the hang of it. What about you? Are there any CarPlay tips or tricks you'd like me to cover in a future video, or any questions that you've still got? Drop me a comment and let me know. And as ever, if you found this video useful, do please consider leaving me a like and subscribing to my channel for more content like this in the future. See you on the next video.